Staff Sergeant Maria Chen's boots echoed against the concrete floor as she marched into Major Daniels' office at Forward Operating Base Red Hawk. The Afghan sun blazed through the window, casting harsh shadows across the cramped room that smelled of stale coffee and diesel fuel. Her uniform was still dust-covered from the morning patrol, and somewhere beneath the fabric, her heart hammered against her ribs like a prisoner trying to escape. Major Daniels sat behind his battered metal desk, his face carved from stone. He didn't invite her to sit. He didn't offer water, though the temperature outside pushed 110 degrees. He simply slid a manila folder across the desk, and Chen knew this was the end of everything she'd worked for. "Staff Sergeant Chen," Daniels began, his voice flat and official, "you've been formally accused of abandoning your post during yesterday's convoy escort mission through Sector 7. The charges are serious: dereliction of duty, reckless endangerment of fellow soldiers, potential cowardice in the face of enemy activity." Each word landed like a punch. Chen's jaw tightened, but she maintained her composure, eyes fixed on a point just above the major's head. Military bearing. Always military bearing, even when your world is collapsing. "The evidence is substantial," Daniels continued, opening the folder. "Radio logs indicate you broke convoy formation at 14:47 hours without authorization or communication. Tactical positioning software shows your vehicle left the designated route for approximately 40 minutes. During that time, your convoy entered a Taliban-heavy sector without proper security coverage. Private First Class Derek Mason and Specialist Kyle Brent have both given sworn statements that you abandoned your position without explanation or warning." Chen's fists clenched at her sides, but she said nothing. Daniels leaned forward. "Sergeant, 3 vehicles carrying essential supplies and 12 American soldiers were left vulnerable because of your actions. We were lucky, damn lucky, that nothing happened. But luck isn't strategy. Luck isn't discipline. And luck sure as hell isn't what I expect from a soldier with your experience." The silence that followed was suffocating. Somewhere outside, a helicopter roared to life. Voices shouted over the sound of grinding machinery. The war continued, indifferent to one soldier's falling sky. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Daniels asked, though his tone suggested he didn't expect an answer that would matter. Chen's throat was dry. She could speak. She could explain. She could tell them about the little girl, about the blood, about the impossible choice she'd made on that dusty road. But the words stayed locked behind her teeth. Some truths were too dangerous to speak aloud. Some decisions couldn't be defended, even when they were right. "No, sir," she said quietly. Daniel's eyebrows rose slightly. "No, you're not even going to try to explain where you were, what you were doing." "No, sir." The major sat back in his chair, studying her face as if looking for cracks in armor. "Sergeant Chen, I've reviewed your service record, 3 tour. Bronze Star for valor after you pulled 2 wounded soldiers from a burning vehicle in Kandahar. Commendations. Spotless evaluations. You're one of the best combat medics I've seen in 20 years of service." He paused. "Which makes this situation even more baffling. What the hell happened out there?" Chen's eyes remained fixed on that spot above his head. "I have nothing to add to the report, sir." Daniels closed the folder with a sharp snap. "Then you leave me no choice. First Sergeant Garrett will handle your administrative separation proceedings. You'll remain on base, restricted to non-essential duties until the hearing. Dismissed." Chen saluted, executed a perfect about-face, and walked out of the office. Her legs felt like they belonged to someone else. In the hallway she passed soldiers who'd served with her, trained with her, bled with her. Some looked away. Others stared with mixtures of confusion and disappointment. The whispers had already started. Chen cracked, Chen failed, Chen couldn't handle the pressure. 30 minutes later, Chen sat on her bunk in the female barracks, staring at the photograph tucked into her helmet band. It showed her unit from her first deployment, all of them young and invincible before the war taught them otherwise. She joined the army to serve something greater than herself, to protect people who couldn't protect themselves, to make a difference. And now it was ending in disgrace. The barracks door opened, and First Sergeant William Bull Garrett stepped inside. He was a mountain of a man, 6'4" with shoulders like a linebacker and a face that looked like it had argued with a cheese grater and lost. 20 years of service had carved lines around his eyes and gray into his close-cropped hair. He'd seen everything the army could throw at a soldier, and survived it all by following one simple rule: regulations over feelings, protocol over sentiment. He stood at the foot of her bunk, holding her service jacket in one massive hand. "Staff Sergeant Chen," he said, his voice like gravel in a cement mixer, "I've been assigned as your separation authority. I've processed 62 discharge cases in my career. 62 soldiers who couldn't cut it, couldn't handle the pressure, or couldn't follow orders." He paused, his cold gray eyes boring into hers. "You're about to be number 63. Chen met his gaze without flinching. "Yes, First Sergeant." Garrett opened her jacket, scanning the pages within. Bronze Star, Army Commendation Medal, Combat Medical Badge, 3 deployment patches. He looked up. Hell of a record to throw away. "Yes, First Sergeant." "And you're not going to tell me what really happened out there?" Chen's silence was her only answer. Garrett closed the jacket with a sound like a judge's gavel. "Your hearing is scheduled for next Thursday at 900 hours. I suggest you use the time to prepare a defense, or at least come up with a story that makes sense." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. For just a moment, something flickered across his face, doubt, perhaps, or curiosity, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Dismissed, Sergeant." And then Chen was alone, watching through the window as the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky the color of fire and blood. She thought about the little girl with the torn leg and the terrified eyes, about the choice she'd made, about the price she was about to pay. Some things were worth more than a career. Some things were worth everything. Even if no one would ever know, First Sergeant William Bull Garrett didn't believe in coincidences. In 20 years of military service, he'd learned that when something smelled wrong, it usually was wrong. But he also didn't believe in making exceptions to regulations, no matter how decorated a soldier might be. His job was simple: gather the facts, follow protocol, and process the discharge. Feelings didn't enter the equation. He started the investigation at 600 hours the next morning, interviewing every member of the convoy that had traveled through Sector 7. The process was methodical, clinical. Garrett took notes in his precise block handwriting, recording every detail in the green notebook he'd carried through 3 deployments. Sergeant First Class Marcus Thompson was first. A 12-year veteran with a face like weathered leather, Thompson had served with Chen on 2 previous tours. "Sergeant Chen is the best medic I've ever worked with," Thompson said, sitting ramrod straight in the interview room. "She saved more lives than I can count. What happened out there? I don't know, First Sergeant, but I know Chen. She wouldn't abandon her post without a damn good reason." "Did she communicate with you before leaving formation?" Garrett asked. "No, First Sergeant." "Did she seem distressed, unstable?" Thompson's jaw tightened. "Chen doesn't get unstable. She's the one who keeps everyone else stable when the bullets start flying." Garrett made a note. "Witness vouches for character but cannot explain deviation from protocol." Corporal Jennifer Hayes was next. She'd been driving the second vehicle in the convoy. "I saw Chen's Humvee break formation," Hayes said, nervously twisting her hands. "One minute she was there, the next she was gone. We were in Taliban territory, First Sergeant. We needed that security coverage. I was scared." "Did Staff Sergeant Chen give any indication of her intentions?" "No, the radio was dead, some kind of communications blackout. When she came back 40 minutes later, she looked." Hayes paused, searching for words. "She looked like she'd been through hell, covered in dust and something else. Maybe blood, I'm not sure." Garrett's pen stopped mid-stroke. "Blood." I thought so at the time, but it could have been mud. Everything's brown out there. The interviews continued throughout the morning. Specialist Rodriguez praised Chen's leadership. Private First Class Jackson called her the toughest medic in the battalion. Lieutenant Morrison said she was exemplary in every respect, but couldn't explain why she'd broken protocol. Then came Private First Class Derek Mason. Mason was 22, with the kind of pretty boy features that probably made him popular in high school but earned him no favors in a combat zone. He transferred to the unit 6 weeks earlier from Fort Bragg. Something about his smile reminded Garrett of a used car salesman. Staff Sergeant Chen is reckless, Mason said, leaning back in his chair with an air of casual confidence that immediately set Garrett's teeth on edge. She thinks her record means she can do whatever she wants. Out there in Sector 7, she just took off, didn't say a word, left us hanging. You've only been in this unit for 6 weeks, Garrett noted. That's not a lot of time to assess someone's character. Doesn't take long to see who follows orders and who doesn't, First Sergeant. Garrett studied Mason's face. The young soldier maintained eye contact a little too consistently, like someone who'd read about how honest people behave but was overcompensating. Where were you stationed before Fort Bragg? Fort Hood, First Sergeant. And before that? A flicker of something annoyance maybe crossed Mason's face. Fort Carson, then Fort Benning before that. 4 bases in 2 years. Red flag number 1. Specialist Kyle Brent came next. He was Mason's shadow, same age, similar build, but without Mason's false confidence. Brent seemed nervous, avoiding eye contact, his leg bouncing under the table. Tell me what you saw, Garrett said. Same as Mason, First Sergeant. Chen just disappeared, put the whole convoy at risk. You've also only been here 6 weeks, correct? Yes, First Sergeant. You transferred in with Private Mason. Yes, First Sergeant. We knew each other from Fort Hood. Garrett leaned forward. Specialist Brent, look at me. The young soldier's eyes reluctantly met his. I need you to tell me the absolute truth. Did Staff Sergeant Chen do anything before she left formation? Any communication attempt? Any signal? Brent's Adam's apple bobbed. No, First Sergeant, nothing. But there was something in his voice, a tremor, a hesitation. Garrett had interrogated enough soldiers to recognize the sound of a man wrestling with his conscience. After the interviews, Garrett spent 4 hours reviewing tactical footage from the convoy's dashboard cameras and drone surveillance. The timeline was damning. 14:47 hours, Chen's vehicle broke right, leaving the main route. 15:27 hours she returned, her uniform visibly dirty, her face set in an expression Garrett couldn't quite read. Not fear, not guilt, something else. Determination, maybe, or resignation. He pulled up the communications logs. Sure enough, there had been a blackout, 42 minutes of dead air caused by what the tech officer called atmospheric interference. It happened sometimes in the mountains, but the timing was suspicious. Garrett returned to his office and spread Chen's service jacket across his desk. Bronze Star citation. For exceptionally valorous actions under enemy fire while providing medical care to wounded soldiers during an ambush in Kandahar Province. Army Commendation Medal. 3 deployment patches representing 4 years of combat service. Efficiency reports that read like recommendations for sainthood. Exemplary. Outstanding. The epitome of military bearing and competence. This wasn't the file of someone who cracked under pressure. He opened Mason's service jacket next. Transferred from Fort Benning to Fort Carson after 9 months. Transferred from Fort Carson to Fort Hood after 7 months. Transferred from Fort Hood to Fort Bragg after 8 months. No Article 15s, no formal disciplinary actions, but the pattern spoke volumes. Soldiers who moved that frequently were usually either genuinely unlucky or actively running from something. Brent's file showed 2 official reprimands for insubordination at Fort Hood, both written up by different NCOs within the same month. Then suddenly, transfer approved. fresh start at a new base. Garrett sat back in his chair, chewing on the end of his pen, a habit his wife had been trying to break for 15 years. The evidence against Chen was ironclad. The timeline was clear. The witnesses had given statements. By every regulation in the book, she deserved discharge. But something was wrong. His phone buzzed. A text from Major Daniels, status on Chen investigation. Garrett typed back, ongoing, will have recommendation by Friday. He needed more time. He needed to understand why a Bronze Star recipient with a spotless record would suddenly commit career suicide. And he needed to figure out why two soldiers who barely knew Chen were so eager to bury her. As the sun set over forward operating base Red Hawk, casting long shadows across the dusty compound, Garrett made a decision. He was going to find out what really happened in Sector 7, even if it meant bending a few rules himself. That night, after the base had settled into its restless sleep, a folded piece of paper appeared under Garrett's door. He found it at 2300 hours when he returned from the latrine. The note was written in careful block letters like someone trying to disguise their handwriting. Check the village NEAR grid 42 Alpha. CHEN was there. Ask WHY. Garrett held the paper up to the light looking for any identifying marks. Nothing. He checked the hallway. Empty. Grid 42 Alpha. He pulled out his tactical map and located the coordinates. A small village, maybe 30 buildings, located in a valley about 3 kilometers off the main convoy route. Technically, a restricted zone, civilian contact required prior authorization from battalion command. If Chen had gone there, she'd violated regulations even more seriously than the abandonment charges suggested. But why would someone anonymously tip him off about it? Garrett stared at the note for a long time, weighing his options. Following this lead meant conducting an unauthorized investigation, visiting a restricted village without proper clearance, potentially compromising his own career just weeks before retirement. The smart move was to ignore it, finish the discharge paperwork, let Chen face the consequences of her choices, whatever they were. But Bull Garrett hadn't survived 20 years in the army by ignoring his instincts. And his instincts were screaming that something was very, very wrong. Garrett stood outside the motor pool at 5:30 hours, watching the sun bleed red across the Afghan mountains. He'd barely slept, the anonymous note burning a hole in his mind. Grid 42 Alpha, a restricted village that shouldn't have had anything to do with a convoy escort mission. Yet someone wanted him to look there. Someone who knew what Chen had really done. This is stupid, he muttered to himself, climbing into a Humvee. Monumentally, career-endingly stupid. But he'd already requisitioned the vehicle, already signed out the interpreter, a local man named Farid who'd worked with the base for 3 years. Farid sat in the passenger seat, his weathered face neutral, asking no questions. Good interpreters learned not to question crazy Americans. The drive took 45 minutes, winding through mountain passes where the Taliban had ambushed convoys more times than Garrett wanted to count. Every shadow could hide an IED. Every distant figure could be a spotter with a radio. He kept his rifle ready, hyper-aware that if something went wrong out here, no one even knew where he was. The village materialized like a mirage, mud brick compounds clustered around a dried-up well, children playing in the dust, women carrying water jugs on their heads. The moment the Humvee appeared, the children scattered. Doors slammed shut. This was a place that had learned to fear military vehicles. Garrett parked at the village edge and stepped out slowly, hands visible, rifle slung across his back in a non-threatening position. Farid followed, calling out greetings in Pashto. For several long minutes, nothing happened. Then an elderly man emerged from the largest compound, his white beard reaching his chest, his eyes sharp and cautious. Farid spoke rapidly in Pashto. The elder responded, his voice flat, giving nothing away. The conversation went back and forth, ritual greetings, establishing respect, the careful dance of Afghan hospitality mixed with wartime suspicion. "He asks what we want," Farid translated. "He says they have done nothing wrong." Garrett pulled out a photo of Chen from her service file. "Ask him if he's seen this soldier. Tell him I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need to understand what happened 3 days ago." Farid showed the photo to the elder. The old man's face remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes, recognition, quickly suppressed. He shook his head, speaking firmly. "He says he doesn't know her," Farid translated. "He says no Americans have been here." Garrett felt his frustration rising but kept his voice calm. "Tell him that this soldier is in serious trouble. Tell him she might lose everything, her career, her honor. Tell him I'm trying to help her, but I need the truth." Before Farid could translate, an elderly woman emerged from inside the compound. She was tiny, hunched with age, her face a map of wrinkles. But her eyes were fierce, burning with something Garrett couldn't quite identify. She looked at the photo in the elder's hand, and her entire body began to tremble. She started speaking rapidly, urgently, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. The elder tried to silence her, reaching for her arm, but she shook him off. The words poured out of her like water from a broken dam, desperate, passionate, unstoppable. Farid's eyes widened as he listened. He turned to Garrett, his professional neutrality cracking. "First Sergeant," she says. "She says the soldier in the photo saved her granddaughter's life." Garrett's heart kicked into overdrive. "Tell me everything, every detail." The story emerged in fragments, translated through Farid's halting English, supplemented by the old woman's gestures and tears. 3 days ago, the girl, 8 years old, named Amina, had been with her parents in their fields when they triggered an old IED, probably left over from the Soviet war. The explosion killed both parents instantly. Amina was thrown 20 meters, her left leg nearly severed, her abdomen torn open by shrapnel. The villagers had no medical supplies, no way to help her. They'd begun preparing for her death, wrapping her in blankets, praying for mercy. She was bleeding out, minutes from death, when Chen had appeared on the road. "The American soldier was in a military truck," Farid translated, his voice thick with emotion. "She saw Amina on the roadside where the villagers had carried her, hopping for a miracle. The soldier stopped her vehicle. She looked at the girl, and the grandmother says she saw the soldier's face change, like she had made a decision. Chen had radioed something, probably reporting a mechanical issue, Garrett guessed, then grabbed her medical kit and ran to Amina. The Taliban controlled this area. Communications were dead. A convoy was moving through hostile territory. Every regulation said Chen should have called for medevac and continued her mission. Instead, she'd carried the dying child into a partially destroyed compound, and for 40 minutes, worked alone to save her life. The grandmother says the soldier's hands were covered in blood," Farid continued. "She was doing surgery, real surgery, with just the tools from her bag, cutting away dead tissue, clamping arteries, stitching organs. The grandmother says she'd never seen anything like it." The old woman grabbed Garrett's hand, pressing it between both of hers, speaking urgently. "She says Taliban fighters were moving through the village that day," Farid translated. "They heard the explosion, came to investigate. If they'd found an American soldier here, they would have killed everyone. The soldier, the villagers, everyone. So the village men hid the soldier and the girl in an underground storage room, covered the entrance, stood outside and lied to the Taliban." Garrett's throat was tight. "They risked their lives." "She says the American soldier was risking hers to save a child she didn't know. How could they do less?" When Chen had finished her emergency surgery, working by flashlight in a hole in the ground while Taliban fighters walked overhead, Amina was stabilized. Not saved, not yet, but alive. Breathing. Chen had left her antibiotics, pressure bandages, instructions through gestures and broken Pashto. Then she climbed back in her vehicle and returned to her convoy, saying nothing about what she'd done. "Why didn't she report it?" Garrett asked. She could have called for medevac, gotten the girl real medical help. Farid spoke with the elder, who responded with obvious reluctance. This village is in a restricted zone, Farid said quietly. If the soldier reported being here, if she called for helicopter evacuation, there would be investigations. Questions about why villagers helped hide an American. The Taliban would hear about it. They would come back and punish everyone who helped. The old woman was still clutching Garrett's hand, tears streaming down her face. She pulled something from her robe, a small scrap of cloth, stained dark brown with dried blood. Chen's blood, Garrett realized. She'd cut herself during the surgery. She says the soldier is a gift from God, Farid translated softly. She says if this soldier is punished for saving Amina, there is no justice in the world. Garrett stood in that dusty village, holding a piece of blood-stained cloth, and felt his world shift on its axis. Chen hadn't abandoned her post out of cowardice or incompetence. She'd seen a dying child and made an impossible choice: save the girl and destroy her own career, or follow regulations and let an 8-year-old bleed to death in the dirt. She'd chosen the child, and then she'd chosen to protect the villagers who'd saved her life by staying silent, accepting discharge, accepting disgrace. "Where is the girl now?" Garrett asked. The elder spoke, his voice heavy with sorrow. "She died 2 days ago," Farid translated. "The infection was too much. The soldier did everything she could, but—" Garrett closed his eyes. Chen had sacrificed everything, and the girl had died anyway. The unfairness of it crashed over him like a wave. Then the old woman spoke again, sharply, correcting her husband. A flash of hope crossed her weathered face. Farid's expression changed. "Wait, the elder is wrong. The girl didn't die. She was taken to a clinic in the next province yesterday. A doctor there said she might survive if she gets to a real hospital. The family is trying to raise money for transport to Kabul." Alive. Against all odds, Amina was still alive. Garrett pulled out his wallet and handed the elder every bill he had, maybe $300. "For the hospital, tell them. Tell them the American soldier would want this." The drive back to base was silent. Garrett's mind was racing, processing implications, calculating his next move. He had the truth now. Chen was innocent, more than innocent. She was a hero who'd saved a child's life while under threat of Taliban attack, then accepted punishment to protect the villagers who'd harbored her. But the truth wasn't enough. Not in the army. Not when regulations had been violated, no matter how noble the reason. He needed to take this to Major Daniels immediately, get the charges dropped, expose what really happened. Garrett pulled into the motor pool at 1200 hours, his determination solid as steel. He'd been wrong about Chen, and he was going to make it right. He didn't notice Private Mason watching from across the compound, or see him pull out his phone and make a quick call. The wheels of conspiracy were already turning. And Garrett had just painted a target on his own back. Garrett found Mason in the maintenance bay, elbow-deep in engine grease, looking like every other soldier performing routine vehicle work. But Garrett's instincts were screaming now. He'd spent the drive back from the village putting pieces together. Mason's multiple transfers, Brent's disciplinary history, the convenient timing of their accusations against Chen. It all pointed to something rotten. "Private Mason," Garrett's voice cut through the metallic clanging. "We need to talk now." Mason looked up, and for just a fraction of a second, something cold flashed across his face. Then the easy smile returned. "Sure, First Sergeant, just let me wash up." "Now means now, Private." They walked to an empty storage building behind the motor pool, a concrete box filled with spare parts and the smell of motor oil. Garrett closed the door, and the temperature immediately spiked in the enclosed space. "Good. Let Mason sweat." "I want the truth about what happened during that convoy," Garrett said, positioning himself between Mason and the door. "And I want it right now." Mason's smile never wavered. I already gave my statement, First Sergeant. Chen abandoned her post. That's what happened. You've been in this unit 6 weeks. You barely know Chen. Why are you so eager to end her career? I'm not eager for anything. I'm just reporting what I saw. Garrett took a step closer, using his size to advantage. You've transferred 4 times in 2 years. That's not normal. What are you running from, Mason? The smile finally cracked. With respect, First Sergeant, my transfer history isn't relevant to. Everything's relevant when a decorated soldier is being railroaded by someone who just showed up. Garrett pulled out his notebook. Fort Benning to Fort Carson, 9 months. Fort Carson to Fort Hood, 7 months. Fort Hood to Fort Bragg, 8 months. Now here. What happened at each base that made you run? Mason's jaw tightened. I didn't run from anywhere. I requested reassignments for career development. Bullshit. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Mason's eyes narrowed, the friendly facade evaporating completely. You need to be careful, First Sergeant. You're close to retirement. Would be a shame if complications arose. It was a threat, thinly veiled, and it confirmed every suspicion Garrett had. Is that how you operate? Threaten people, make problems disappear? Before Mason could respond, the door opened. Specialist Brent stood there looking nervous and confused. Mason, you said you needed. Oh, sorry, First Sergeant. I didn't know you were. Get in here, Specialist, Garrett ordered. Close that door. Brent obeyed, his eyes darting between Garrett and Mason like a trapped animal looking for escape routes. The kid was scared. Good. Scared people made mistakes. Garrett focused on Brent, deliberately turning his back on Mason, a calculated insult. Specialist Brent, I'm going to ask you one question, and I want an honest answer. Your career depends on it. Did Staff Sergeant Chen actually abandon her post, or is there something else going on here? Brent's face went pale. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. First Sergeant, I already gave my statement. Your statement matches Mason's word for word, almost like someone told you what to say. Nobody told me anything. Then why are you lying? The word hit like a slap. Brent flinched and Garrett saw it, the moment when the dam almost broke. The kid wanted to confess, wanted to unload whatever weight he'd been carrying. Mason moved forward. We don't have to listen to this. Come on, Brent. Stand down, Private, Garrett snapped. Nobody's leaving until I get answers. With respect, First Sergeant, Mason's voice dripped with false courtesy. You can't hold us here without cause, and you especially can't conduct unauthorized interrogations without. I know what Chen did. Garrett dropped the bomb and watched both soldiers freeze. I know about the village. I know about the little girl. I know everything. Brent's face crumbled. Mason's expression went carefully blank. So here's what's going to happen, Garrett continued. You're both going to tell me the real reason you accused Chen, and then we're going to figure out how to fix this mess before it destroys an innocent soldier's career. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Brent's shoulders sagged like a puppet with cut strings. Mason, I can't do this anymore, man. Shut up, Brent. She saved a kid's life. We're sending her home in disgrace for saving a kid's life. I said shut up. Mason's voice cracked like a whip, all pretense of friendliness gone. But the dam had broken. Brent turned to Garrett, words tumbling out in a desperate rush. Mason's been selling military fuel to local merchants. Diesel, gasoline, whatever he can siphon from convoy supplies. He's making thousands, First Sergeant. Thousands of dollars. Garrett's fists clenched. Keep talking. Chen saw something during the convoy. I don't know what exactly. Maybe one of Mason's transactions or paperwork something. Mason panicked. Said we had to discredit her before she reported what she saw. So when she disappeared that day, Mason saw an opportunity. Told me we had to file the abandonment report, say she left us vulnerable. He said if I didn't back him up, he'd tell everyone I was involved in the fuel theft too. You weren't involved? Garrett asked. No, I swear, First Sergeant, I was scared. Mason said he'd ruin me if I didn't cooperate. He's got connections, people who can make problems for soldiers who cross him. Mason's face was stone. You're lying. You're trying to save your own ass by throwing me under the bus. I'm done lying, Brent's voice broke. I'm done being part of this. Chen doesn't deserve what we did to her. Garrett felt a surge of grim satisfaction. He had his confession. He had his evidence. Now he just needed to take it up the chain of command and watch the whole conspiracy collapse. Both of you are confined to quarters effective immediately, he said. I'm taking this to Major Daniels right now. Mason, you're looking at court-martial for theft, fraud, and conspiracy. Brent, you might catch a break if you cooperate fully with the investigation. Mason laughed, a cold, bitter sound. You really think taking this to Daniels is going to help Chen? Something in his tone made Garrett pause. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're even dumber than I thought, First Sergeant. Why do you think we've gotten away with this for so long? How do you think fuel goes missing without anyone noticing? How do you think paperwork gets approved without questions? Understanding crashed over Garrett like ice water. Daniels. Daniels. Mason's smile was ugly now. His signature is on every requisition form, every fuel transfer, every supply manifest. He's not just covering for me, he's my partner. You think he wants Chen around asking questions. She's got to go, and he's going to make sure she does. Garrett's mind raced. If Daniels was involved, going to him would accomplish nothing. Worse than nothing, it would warn them that Garrett knew the truth. He'd be neutralized before he could take it higher. You're bluffing, Garrett said, but even he could hear the doubt in his voice. Am I? Go ahead, First Sergeant. Take your evidence to Daniels, see what happens. Mason leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. You're 42 days from retirement, full pension. That house in North Carolina your wife picked out. All of it goes away if you push this. Daniels will bury you right alongside Chen. Is one soldier really worth losing everything you've worked for? Garrett wanted to hit him, wanted to drag both of them to the stockade and throw away the key. But Mason was right about one thing. Going to Daniels was suicide if the major was involved. He needed proof, hard evidence linking Daniels to the fuel theft. Without it, he was just another soldier making accusations against a superior officer. They'd destroy his credibility, confine him for insubordination, and push Chen's discharge through while he was locked down. Get out, Garrett said quietly. Both of you, but this isn't over. Mason and Brent left. Garrett stood alone in the storage building, his mind spinning through options. He could go to the base commander, Colonel Reeves. But if the corruption went high enough to include a major, who else might be involved? He could contact the Inspector General, but that would take time Chen didn't have. Her discharge hearing was in 6 days. His phone buzzed. A text from Major Daniels. Need to see you in my office, now. Garrett's blood ran cold. Had Mason already warned him? Was this the trap closing? He had no choice. Refusing a direct order from a superior officer would be insubordination. He headed toward Daniels' office, every sense on high alert. Daniels was waiting, standing behind his desk, his face unreadable. Close the door, First Sergeant. Garrett complied. I've received some disturbing reports, Daniels said slowly, about you conducting unauthorized investigations, visiting restricted villages without clearance, interrogating soldiers without proper authority. He paused. Want to tell me what's going on? Every word was a test, a trap. Garrett chose his words carefully. I was following up on leads related to the Chen investigation, sir, gathering all relevant information before making my recommendation. Your recommendation? Daniel's eyes were cold. Your job is to process the discharge, not investigate. The evidence is clear. Chen abandoned her post. End of story. With respect, sir, I believe there's more too. I don't care what you believe, First Sergeant. Daniel's voice hardened. You will complete Chen's discharge paperwork by end of business Friday. You will not conduct any further investigations. You will not visit any more villages. You will not interrogate any more soldiers. Are we clear? It was a direct order. Refusing meant his career. Sir, if I could just explain what I found. Are we clear? Garrett's jaw worked. He thought about Chen, sitting in the barracks accepting disgrace for an act of heroism. He thought about Amina fighting for her life in some clinic. He thought about his retirement, his pension, his wife's dream house. And he thought about the oath he'd taken 20 years ago, to defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Crystal clear, sir. Daniels nodded, satisfied. Good. Now get out of my office and do your damn job. Garrett left, his mind already working on a new plan. If going through the chain of command was impossible, he'd have to go around it, over it, through it if necessary. That night he sat in his quarters and made a list of everyone who might have evidence of the fuel theft. Supply sergeants, convoy manifests, financial records. His phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number. The text message contained just 5 words. They're watching you now, careful. Garrett deleted the message and turned off his phone. The fight was just beginning. And he was running out of time. Garrett sat on his bunk at 200 hours, staring at the retirement papers spread across his footlocker. 42 days. In 42 days, he'd turn in his uniform, collect his pension, and drive to that little house in North Carolina where his wife, Sarah, had already hung curtains and planted flowers. She'd sent him photos, the front porch with rocking chairs, the bedroom with the quilt her mother had made, the kitchen window overlooking a yard where grandchildren could someday play. 20 years of service, 20 years of following orders, doing his duty, playing by the rules. And now, at the finish line, he was about to throw it all away for a soldier he'd barely known 2 weeks ago. His phone buzzed. Sarah's face lit up the screen, their nightly call, scheduled around the 8-hour time difference. Hey baby, her voice was warm, sleepy. You okay? You sound tired. Just a long day, Garrett said, trying to keep his voice steady. How's the house? Oh, Bull, you should see it. I found the perfect spot for your bookshelf and the neighbor brought over tomatoes from her garden. Everyone here is so friendly. 42 more days and you're home for good. She paused. Bull, you still there? Yeah, I'm here. What's wrong? Sarah knew him too well. 23 years of marriage made certain things impossible to hide. Garrett closed his eyes. There's a situation, a soldier who's being railroaded, good soldier, decorated, did the right thing and now she's paying for it. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, and you're thinking about getting involved. I already am involved. I'm supposed to process her discharge. But you found something that says she shouldn't be discharged. More than that, she saved a kid's life, Sarah, an 8-year-old girl who would have died. And now they're throwing her out with a bad discharge because she violated protocol doing it. Meanwhile, the soldiers who accused her are running a theft ring, and at least one officer is covering for them. Another long silence. Garrett could hear Sarah breathing, could imagine her sitting in their new kitchen, wrestling with the same equation he was. How bad could it get, she finally asked, if you push this? I could lose everything, the pension, the retirement. They could charge me with insubordination, unauthorized investigation, conduct unbecoming. I could end up facing a court-martial myself. The house. We'd have to sell it. He heard her sharp intake of breath. That house was her dream. They'd been saving for 15 years, planning every detail. She'd already invited their daughter and son-in-law for Thanksgiving, had picked out the tree they'd plant in the backyard. Sarah, I can walk away. I can process the discharge, do what I'm told, and in 42 days we start our life. Nobody would blame me. It's not my fight. But you won't walk away, Sarah said softly. Because you're Bull Garrett, and you've never walked away from doing what's right in your entire life. It's one of the reasons I love you. It's also one of the reasons I've aged about 15 extra years being married to you." Garrett felt his throat tighten. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry, just promise me you'll be careful. And Bull, that girl you're fighting for, she better be worth it." She really is." After they hung up, Garrett sat in the darkness, feeling the weight of his decision settle over him like armor. He'd made his choice. Now he just needed to execute. At 600 hours, he headed toward Colonel Patricia Reeves's office. The base commander was a hard woman, career military, with a reputation for being fair but unforgiving. If he could get to her before Daniels intercepted him, maybe. "First Sergeant Garrett." Garrett turned. Major Daniels stood in the corridor, flanked by 2 MPs. The major's face was carved from ice. "We need to talk, my office now." The MPs weren't carrying weapons, but their presence sent a clear message. This wasn't a request. In Daniels' office, the door closed with a sound like a cell door slamming. Daniels walked slowly around his desk, each step deliberate, calculated. "I'm going to be very clear with you, First Sergeant. I know what you found in that village. I know you've been asking questions. I know you talked to Mason and Brent." He leaned forward, hands flat on the desk. "And I'm telling you right now to stop. Sir, Staff Sergeant Chen is innocent of the charges against." "I don't give a damn if she's innocent." Daniel's voice cracked like a rifle shot. "You think this is about one soldier. This is about maintaining order, following chain of command, and keeping your nose out of things that don't concern you." "Corruption concerns me, sir. Theft concerns me. Falsifying reports concerns me." Daniel's smile was dangerous. "Careful, First Sergeant. Those are serious accusations, the kind that require evidence, the kind that could blow back on the person making them if they can't prove it." "I have evidence." "Do you? Because I've reviewed the Chen case thoroughly. The evidence against her is solid. 2 sworn statements, radio logs, GPS data. She abandoned her post. End of story." He paused. "And as for these wild allegations about fuel theft, well, that sounds like the desperate theory of a soldier who's about to lose his pension for insubordination." Garrett's hands clenched. "You're threatening me." "I'm warning you. There's a difference. You're a good NCO, Garrett. Don't throw away 20 years for a lost cause. Chen is getting discharged whether you like it or not. The hearing is scheduled for Friday. The outcome is already decided. Your job is to process the paperwork and keep your mouth shut." "And if I don't?" Daniels opened a file on his desk. "Then I'll be forced to initiate disciplinary action against you for conducting unauthorized investigations in restricted areas, interrogating soldiers without proper authority, and insubordination. I've already documented 3 direct orders you've ignored this week. One more and you're looking at an Article 15 at minimum, could escalate to a court-martial." He looked up. "How do you think that affects your retirement, First Sergeant? Your pension? That house your wife picked out?" The room felt airless. Garrett understood the trap now. Daniels had been building a case against him, documenting every step of his investigation as violations. If Garrett pushed forward, he'd be destroyed before he could help Chen. "You're confining me," Garrett said flatly. "Restricted to quarters pending review of your conduct, effective immediately. The MPs outside will escort you to your barracks." Daniel's expression was almost sympathetic. "It's for your own good, Bull. In 42 days you walk away from all this. Let it go." The MPs led Garrett across the base. Soldiers stared. By afternoon everyone would know. First Sergeant Garrett was in trouble. The rumor mill would grind him up, spit him out, make him into a cautionary tale. In his quarters, Garrett paced like a caged animal. His phone, computer, and official files had been confiscated. He was isolated, neutered, unable to contact Colonel Reeves or anyone else who might help. That evening, Chen's discharge hearing proceeded without him. He heard about it later from a sympathetic chaplain who brought him dinner. Chen had stood before the board in her dress uniform, back straight, refusing to defend herself. When asked if she had anything to say, she'd simply replied, "No, sir." The board voted unanimously for discharge, other than honorable conditions, effective immediately. Garrett sat on his bunk, head in his hands, feeling like he'd failed every oath he'd ever taken. He'd tried. God knows he'd tried. But the corruption was too deep, too protected. One NCO against a system designed to protect itself. His door opened without warning. The chaplain stepped inside, looking nervous, and quickly pressed something into Garrett's hand, a folded piece of paper. "Your wife asked me to give this to you," the chaplain whispered. "I didn't see anything, understand." Then he was gone. Garrett unfolded the paper. Sarah's handwriting. "Bull, I smuggled your documentation to the lawyer in town. He made copies, everything you found. I'm sending it to everyone I can think of. If they want to take you down, they'll have to take me down too. Love you, fight." Below that in different handwriting was a name and secure email address. Captain James Rivera, Intelligence. He's been investigating supply irregularities. He might be able to help. Chaplain. Garrett stared at the note, feeling something reignite in his chest. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. Sarah had his back. She'd always had his back. And somewhere on this base, an intelligence officer was building a case that might intersect with Chen's. Garrett closed his eyes and allowed himself one moment of hope. Then he started planning his next move. Outside his window, he could see Chen across the compound, packing her duffel bag, preparing to leave the only life she'd known. Her military career was over, her reputation destroyed, all because she'd saved a child's life. 42 days until retirement. But some things were more important than retirement. Some things were worth everything. Captain James Rivera had been sitting in the processing center for 30 minutes, pretending to review supply manifests while watching Staff Sergeant Maria Chen through the office window. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. Her duffel bag sat at her feet, everything she owned in the Army reduced to 50 pounds of regulation gear. Her discharge papers lay on the desk in front of the admin clerk, waiting for final signatures. Rivera had seen a lot of injustice in his 4 years as an intelligence officer. He'd watched guilty men walk free and innocent ones take falls. But something about Chen's case gnawed at him. He'd heard the rumors: decorated medic, sudden discharge, questionable circumstances. And he'd heard that First Sergeant Garrett, who never broke regulations, had been confined to quarters for asking too many questions. When corruption smelled this bad, it usually connected to something bigger. Rivera stood and walked into the processing office, flashing his credentials. "I need to speak with Staff Sergeant Chen, official intelligence matter." The admin clerk looked confused but nodded. "Sir, she's being discharged today. Her transport leaves in 90 minutes. "Then I better talk fast." He led Chen outside to a bench behind the building, away from curious ears. She followed without question, like someone who'd already accepted that nothing mattered anymore. "Staff Sergeant Chen, I'm Captain Rivera, Intelligence Division. I'm going to be very direct because we don't have much time. I think you're being railroaded, and I think I know why." Chen's expression didn't change. "With respect, sir, I've already been through the hearing. It's over." "It's not over until you're on that plane, and even then it's not over." Rivera pulled out his tablet, calling up files he'd been compiling for 6 months. "I've been investigating supply chain irregularities at this base. Fuel going missing, equipment disappearing. Small amounts, carefully hidden in paperwork, but it adds up to hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past year." "Sir, I don't see what this has to do with." "Private Mason and Specialist Brent, the 2 soldiers who accused you. Mason's been flagged in my investigation 3 times. He's a small-time operator, skimming fuel and selling it locally. But he's protected. Every time I get close, the evidence disappears or witnesses recant their statements. Someone higher up is covering for him. Chen's eyes flickered with something, recognition maybe, or confirmation. During your convoy escort through Sector 7, did you see anything unusual? Rivera asked. Anything involving Mason? Any transactions, meetings, paperwork? Chen was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, I saw Mason talking to a local merchant near the fuel depot before we rolled out. They exchanged something. Could have been anything, cigarettes, letters, money. I didn't think much of it at the time. It wasn't my concern. But Mason thought you saw more than you did. He panicked. And when you disappeared during the convoy, he saw an opportunity to discredit you before you could report anything. I wasn't going to report anything, Chen said. I didn't even think about it after. She stopped abruptly. After what? After you saved that little girl's life. Chen's head snapped up, eyes wide. How do you? First Sergeant Garrett did some digging before he was confined. Word gets around, even in lockdown, especially when his wife starts making calls and sending emails to half the people on this base. Rivera leaned forward. You saved a child's life in a restricted village while Taliban fighters were in the area. You performed field surgery that would have challenged a hospital surgical team. You protected the villagers who hid you by staying silent. And you're accepting discharge rather than defend yourself, because the truth would put innocent people in danger. Tears welled in Chen's eyes, the first emotion Rivera had seen from her. That girl's name is Amina. She's 8 years old. The Taliban would slaughter everyone in that village if they knew Americans were being harbored there. I couldn't. I won't let that happen. I understand. And that's exactly the kind of moral clarity that makes you dangerous to people like Mason and whoever's protecting him. Rivera pulled up another file. Major Daniels has signed off on every suspicious fuel requisition for the past 14 months. His signature is on paperwork that doesn't match actual inventory. Either he's criminally incompetent or he's actively involved in the theft operation. Daniels is my commanding officer. He's corrupt. That's why Garrett was shut down so fast. That's why your hearing was rushed through. They need you gone before anyone looks too closely at the timeline, the evidence, or the motivations behind your accusers. Rivera met her eyes. But here's what they didn't count on me. I've been building a case against this supply theft ring for 6 months. I have documentation. I have patterns. What I don't have is the human element, the proof that they'll destroy innocent soldiers to protect their operation. I'm already destroyed, sir. Not yet. Your discharge isn't final until you're off this base. And even then, discharges can be overturned with sufficient evidence of wrongdoing. He paused. But I need Garrett's testimony about what he found in that village. I need his documentation of the investigation. And I need you to trust me enough to delay getting on that transport. Chen shook her head. Garrett was confined. His files were confiscated. Whatever he found, it's gone. Not all of it. Rivera pulled out his phone, showing her an email from an unfamiliar address. The sender was listed as S. Garrett, Garrett's wife. Mrs. Garrett smuggled out copies of everything before the MPs secured his quarters. She's been sending it to anyone she thinks might help. I got it 2 hours ago. Chen read the email, eyes widening as she scrolled through attached documents. Garrett's interview notes, photos from the village, testimony from the grandmother about Chen's surgery on Amina, evidence of Mason's multiple base transfers, inconsistencies in fuel requisition forms bearing Daniel's signature. This is enough to reopen the investigation, Chen whispered. It's a start, but the chain of command is compromised. If I go to Daniels, he buries it. If I go to Colonel Reeves, there's a chance she's involved too, or at least that she'll refer it back down to Daniels for initial review and it disappears. Rivera's jaw tightened. I need to go over everyone's heads, straight to the Inspector General's office at the Department of Defense. But if I'm wrong, if I jump the chain of command and it turns out I'm chasing shadows, my career is over. Intelligence officers who cry wolf don't get second chances. You want me to confirm your evidence, testify. I want you to give me permission to fight for you. Because once I send this up the chain, there's no taking it back. It becomes official. It becomes an IG investigation. And if they find what I think they'll find, people are going to prison. Officers, enlisted, maybe even contractors. This base will be turned upside down. Chen looked at her discharge papers through the processing center window. She looked at her duffel bag. She looked at the transport plane being fueled on the tarmac. That little girl, Amina, she said quietly. She's still alive. She's at a clinic fighting an infection. If she gets to a real hospital, she might make it. The villagers are trying to raise money for transport. I know, Garrett put it in his report. If this investigation happens, if it becomes public that I was in that village, the Taliban will hear about it. They'll know the villagers helped me. They'll go back there. Rivera had considered this. It was the hole in his plan, the moral complexity that kept him up at night. We could request protection for the village. Special operations could. Could what? Station troops there permanently, in Taliban-controlled territory. You know that's not realistic. Chen stood up, packing. Everything you're describing puts those people in danger. The same people who risk their lives to hide me. I won't repay that by getting them killed. But you'll let yourself be destroyed instead. You'll let criminals stay in uniform while you go home in disgrace. If that's what it takes to keep Amina's grandmother alive, yes. Rivera stood, facing her. What if I told you there's a way to run this investigation without revealing the village? We focus on the fuel theft, on Mason and Brent's false statements, on Daniel's compromised paperwork. We leave the village out of it entirely. Your 40-minute absence becomes a mechanical issue with your vehicle, which is plausible given the communications blackout. We destroy the conspiracy without exposing what you really did. That's lying. That's protecting classified information related to an ongoing intelligence operation. There's a difference. Rivera could see her wavering. Look, I'm not asking you to compromise your integrity. I'm asking you to let me do my job. You saved a child's life and you're being punished for it. Meanwhile, soldiers are stealing military supplies that might be ending up in enemy hands, fuel that powers Taliban vehicles, equipment that gets used against American troops. This isn't just about you anymore. This is about preventing American casualties. Chen was quiet for a long moment, staring at the mountains beyond the base perimeter. Then, what do you need from me? First, don't get on that transport. Find a reason, medical issue, administrative delay, anything. Buy me time to get this to the IG. And second, tell me everything. Not about the village, we're leaving that out. But everything about Mason, about what you saw, about the false accusations. Give me a sworn statement I can attach to the IG complaint. Make it official. Chen took a deep breath. If I do this and it goes wrong, Garrett loses his retirement. You lose your career. I lose any chance of fixing my discharge, and we might not even win. True. Those are terrible odds, sir. The best fights usually have terrible odds. Rivera extended his hand. But I'd rather go down fighting for what's right than play it safe while good soldiers get destroyed. That's not why I joined the army. Chen looked at his hand for a long moment. Then she shook it, her grip firm and certain. Okay, Captain, let's burn it all down. Rivera smiled grimly. There's one more thing. This has to go all the way to the top. I'm talking Inspector General, maybe even Congress if the corruption goes deep enough. And I'm going to need to move fast before Daniels figures out what we're doing. How fast? Rivera checked his watch. Your transport leaves in 70 minutes. I need to have the complaint filed and transmitted before you're officially processed off this base. Once you're gone, it's infinitely harder to reverse the discharge. 70 minutes to write a sworn statement, compile evidence, and bypass the entire chain of command. Welcome to intelligence work. It's mostly panic and coffee. He was already pulling up forms on his tablet. Start talking. Tell me everything about Mason, the convoy, the accusations. And Chen, thank you for trusting me. Don't thank me yet, sir. This could blow up in all our faces. Then we better make sure it's one hell of an explosion. Rivera's fingers flew across his keyboard, building the most important document of his career. Chen sat across from him in a secured communications room, speaking rapidly while he typed, transcribing her sworn statement. 63 minutes until her transport departed. 63 minutes to bypass every regulation, every protocol, every layer of military bureaucracy that stood between them and justice. Are you sure about this, sir? Chen asked for the third time. Once you hit send. I'm sure. Rivera didn't look up from the screen. His report was taking shape. Documented evidence of fuel theft spanning 14 months, Mason's suspicious transfer history, Brent's coerced testimony, Daniel's compromised paperwork, Garrett's wrongful confinement, and Chen's false accusations tied directly to her accidental witnessing of illegal activity. He deliberately omitted any mention of the village or Amina. That truth would stay buried, at least officially. 47 minutes, Chen said, watching the clock. Rivera attached the final document, Garrett's smuggled evidence, now officially part of an intelligence report. His hand hovered over the send button. This wasn't normal channels. This wasn't going to his commanding officer or even to the base commander. This was going directly to the Department of Defense Inspector General's secure tip line, flagged as urgent and corruption AT senior levels. One click, and his career was either made or destroyed. He clicked. The progress bar crawled across his screen. Uploading. Transmitting through encrypted channels. 17 megabytes of evidence, testimony, and documentation shooting through cyberspace toward Washington, D.C. It's done, Rivera said quietly. Now we wait. For what? For them to either act on it immediately or to ignore it completely. He sat back, suddenly exhausted. IG complaints usually take weeks to process, sometimes months, but I flagged this as time-sensitive with an imminent miscarriage of justice, if the right person sees it. Chen's processing officer appeared in the doorway. Staff Sergeant Chen, your transport is ready. We need to finalize your paperwork now. Rivera stood. There's been a delay. Staff Sergeant Chen is feeling ill, possible heat exhaustion. I'm ordering a medical evaluation before she travels. Sir, the transport is scheduled to. I don't care if it's scheduled to fly to the moon. She's not getting on that plane until a medical officer clears her. That's an order, specialist. The clerk retreated, confused but obedient. Rivera turned to Chen. That buys us maybe an hour, 2 at most. Chen smiled faintly. Heat exhaustion in February. Very creative, sir. I'm an intelligence officer. Creativity is in the job description. They waited in tense silence. Minutes crawled by. Outside the window, the transport plane sat on the tarmac, engines idling. Soldiers loaded cargo. Everything proceeded according to schedule, except for one missing passenger. Rivera's phone buzzed. Unknown number, he answered cautiously. Captain Rivera. Captain, this is Deputy Inspector General Patricia Kincaid at the duty. I just received your complaint. Stand by for authentication. A pause. What's your commanding officer's name? Colonel Patricia Reeves, ma'am. And the subject of your investigation? Fuel theft operation involving Private Mason, Specialist Brent, and potentially Major Daniels, ma'am. Another pause. Rivera could hear computer keys clicking. Your complaint mentions a Staff Sergeant Maria Chen facing imminent discharge. What's her status? She's here with me, ma'am. Her transport is scheduled to depart in, he checked the clock, 38 minutes. Do not let her board that aircraft, Captain. That's a direct order from this office. We're reviewing your evidence now. Initial assessment suggests significant irregularities requiring immediate investigation. Rivera felt his heart pounding. Ma'am, with respect, halting a discharge requires authorization from. I'm aware of what it requires, Captain. I'm making calls now. Stand by. The line went dead. Chen stared at him, What just happened? I think someone's actually listening. Rivera couldn't believe it. His hands were shaking. The deputy IG herself, she's reviewing the evidence. That's good, right? That's either very good or very bad. There's no middle ground when the IG gets involved. 20 minutes passed. Rivera's phone rang again. This time a different voice, male, clipped, authoritative. Captain Rivera, this is General Marcus Holden, Inspector General's office. I've reviewed your complaint and supporting documentation. I've also contacted Deputy Secretary of Defense Hammond. She's briefing the President within the hour. Rivera nearly dropped his phone. The President, sir. Your evidence indicates corruption at the field-grade officer level, affecting combat operations in an active theater. That goes straight to the top, Captain. The President takes personal interest in cases where soldiers face retaliation for refusing to participate in criminal activity. Sir, Staff Sergeant Chen's transport is grounded by executive authority as of this moment. I'm issuing orders directly to Forward Operating Base Red Hawk. All discharge proceedings against Staff Sergeant Chen are suspended pending investigation. First Sergeant Garrett is to be released from confinement immediately. Major Daniels, Private Mason, and Specialist Brent are confined to base pending arrival of Criminal Investigation Command. Rivera felt like he was in a dream. Sir, yes, sir. Captain, you just kicked a hornet's nest. I hope you're ready for what comes next. CID will be there within 12 hours. They'll want full cooperation. Understood. Understood, sir. One more thing. The Deputy Secretary lost her son in Iraq 6 years ago. Equipment failure caused by contractor fraud, someone skimming money meant for vehicle maintenance. Soldiers died because criminals put profit over duty. When she sees cases like this, she doesn't wait for paperwork. She acts. You picked the right person's desk to land on. The line disconnected. Rivera looked at Chen, who was watching him with wide eyes. What? She asked. You're not getting on that plane. What? You're not getting discharged. Everything's suspended by order of the Inspector General's office. CID is coming. Daniels is being confined. And the President is being briefed on your case. Chen sat down heavily. The President of the United States. Apparently corruption in combat zones gets his attention. Outside, Rivera could see military police vehicles racing across the base toward the administrative buildings. In the distance, Major Daniels emerged from his office, flanked by 2 MPs. Even from here, Rivera could see the shock on his face. Across the compound, Garrett's door opened. The first sergeant stepped out into the sunlight, looking confused as an MP handed him back his confiscated materials and said something that made his face transform with hope. Chen stood slowly, watching it all unfold. Is this really happening? It's really happening. What about the village, Amina? Stays classified, stays buried. Your service record will show you had vehicle trouble during a communications blackout. That's the official story, and it's what we're sticking with. Tears streamed down Chen's face, not from sadness, but from the sudden, overwhelming release of pressure she'd been carrying for days. I thought it was over. I thought I'd lost everything. You almost did, but sometimes, just sometimes, the system actually works. Rivera allowed himself a small smile. Although between you and me, I'm fairly certain I just committed about 17 violations of protocol and probably shortened my career by a decade. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. This investigation is just beginning. It's going to get ugly. Careers will end. People will go to prison. And you're going to have to testify, probably multiple times. I'm ready. An hour later, Colonel Reeves received a phone call on her secure line. She answered, expecting routine communication. Instead, she heard, Colonel Reeves, this is White House Deputy Chief of Staff calling on behalf of the President. Please stand by. Reeves sat up straight. her mind racing through every possible reason the White House would be calling her directly. Then the president's voice came through, clear and firm. "Colonel Reeves, I've just been briefed on a corruption investigation at your base involving fuel theft, false accusations against a decorated soldier, and obstruction of justice at the officer level. I'm ordering immediate suspension of all pending discharge proceedings against Staff Sergeant Maria Chen. I'm also ordering full cooperation with CID investigators arriving within the day. And Colonel, if I find out this corruption goes higher than Major Daniels, you'll be the next one answering very uncomfortable questions. Am I clear?" "Crystal clear, Mr. President." "Good." Staff Sergeant Chen performed an act of exceptional courage under impossible circumstances. Instead of being celebrated, she was nearly destroyed by criminals in uniform. That ends today. I want a full report on my desk within 72 hours. And Colonel, fix your base. The line went dead. Reeves sat in stunned silence, then immediately ordered her aide. "Get Major Daniels in here now. Actually, belay that. Have the MPs bring him. He's officially relieved of duty as of this moment." Within minutes, the base was in controlled chaos. Officers scrambled. Soldiers whispered. MPs escorted Mason and Brent to the stockade. And on the tarmac, a transport plane took off without its scheduled passenger. Chen stood watching it climb into the Afghan sky, Rivera beside her. "That could have been you," Rivera said. "But it wasn't, because one intelligence officer decided to fight when he didn't have to. And because one medic decided saving a life was more important than saving her career. Think we'll get in trouble for all this?" Rivera laughed. "Oh, absolutely. Massive trouble, paperwork for years, but the good kind of trouble. There's a good kind. Yeah, the kind where you sleep at night knowing you did the right thing." Criminal Investigation Command helicopters descended on forward operating base Red Hawk like avenging angels, rotor wash kicking up dust storms that forced soldiers to shield their eyes. Within 48 hours, the base transformed into a crime scene. CID agents swarmed through offices, seizing computers, confiscating files, interviewing anyone connected to supply operations. The investigation was swift, thorough, and merciless. Private Mason broke first. Faced with forensic evidence of deleted emails, altered requisition forms, and witness testimony from local merchants who'd bought stolen fuel, he accepted a plea deal. 12 years in military prison plus dishonorable discharge. He named everyone involved, Brent, Daniels, and 2 other officers who'd been taking cuts of the profits. The corruption had run deeper than even Rivera suspected. Specialist Brent received 8 years for conspiracy and false testimony. He cried during sentencing, apologizing to Chen directly. She sat stone-faced in the courtroom, accepting his apology with a single nod but no words. Some betrayals didn't deserve absolution. Major Daniels fought the charges until CID agents discovered his offshore bank account containing nearly $400,000. His military career of 18 years ended in a court-martial conviction: corruption, theft of government property, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. 25 years in Leavenworth. His wife filed for divorce before the trial ended. The investigation revealed that stolen fuel had indeed reached Taliban hands, indirectly funding attacks that wounded 3 American soldiers. When the president learned this, his statement was brief and scorching. "Corruption in uniform is a betrayal of every soldier who serves honorably. It will not be tolerated. It will be prosecuted, and it will be punished." But the real transformation happened 3 months later. First Sergeant Bull Garrett stood in the audience at the White House, wearing his dress blues for the final time. His retirement had been approved with full honors, his record cleared of any disciplinary actions. Sarah sat beside him, squeezing his hand so tight he'd lost circulation 20 minutes ago. Their daughter and grandchildren filled the row behind them, craning their necks to see. Staff Sergeant Maria Chen stood at attention in the East Room, surrounded by military brass, government officials, and press cameras. She wore her dress uniform, the fabric crisp and perfect, medals gleaming on her chest. But one spot remained empty, the space where her new award would go. The president entered and everyone stood. He moved through the room with practiced ease, shaking hands, greeting families. When he reached Garrett, he paused. "First Sergeant Garrett, I understand you risked everything to uncover the truth." "Just did my job, Mr. President." "Your job was to process a discharge. You chose to do what was right instead. That's the difference between following orders and following your conscience." The president's grip was firm. "The country needs more NCOs like you." Sarah beamed beside her husband, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Mr. President," she whispered. "Thank you for listening." Then the president moved to Chen. The room fell silent. "Staff Sergeant Maria Chen," the president began, his voice carrying through the ornate room. "3 months ago you faced an impossible choice. You could follow protocol and continue your mission, or you could stop to help someone in desperate need. You chose compassion, you chose courage, and you paid a terrible price for that choice." Chen's eyes remained forward, military bearing perfect, but Garrett could see her throat working against emotion. "What happened to you was an injustice," the president continued. "False accusations from criminals, obstruction from corrupt officers, a system that nearly destroyed you for doing the right thing. But the same system that failed you also corrected itself, because good people refused to look away. Captain Rivera, First Sergeant Garrett, and you, Staff Sergeant Chen, who maintained your integrity even when it cost you everything." An aide brought forward a blue velvet box. "The Soldier's Medal is awarded for heroism not involving combat with the enemy. It recognizes acts of courage that involve the voluntary risk of life under conditions other than combat." The president opened the box, revealing the distinctive medal with its eagle and shield. "Staff Sergeant Chen, your actions exemplify the highest traditions of military service. You risked your career, your reputation, and your safety to save an innocent life. You performed battlefield surgery under threat of enemy attack, and you protected those who helped you, even when it meant accepting disgrace." He pinned the medal to her uniform, then stepped back and saluted. Chen returned the salute, crisp and precise. "Thank you," the president said quietly, "for reminding us what service truly means." The room erupted in applause. Chen's squad mates who'd flown in from Afghanistan cheered from the back. Garrett wiped his eyes, not caring who saw. Rivera stood in his dress uniform, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. After the ceremony, Chen found Garrett outside on the White House portico. "First Sergeant," she said, extending her hand, "thank you for everything." Garrett pulled her into a fierce hug instead. "You saved a child's life, Chen. That took more courage than most soldiers will ever need. I'm proud to have served with you." "What's next for you?" "Retirement in North Carolina." "Day after tomorrow." Sarah's already got a honey-do list 3 pages long. "Apparently that porch isn't going to paint itself." He smiled. "What about you?" "Back to duty, new unit, fresh start, and," she paused, "I got word this morning. Amina made it to Kabul. A hospital there performed reconstructive surgery. She's going to walk again." Garrett felt his chest tighten. "That girl owes you her life." "She doesn't owe me anything. I did what any decent person would do, what any soldier should do." Chen looked back at the White House, at the symbol of everything she'd nearly lost. "I just wish it hadn't taken the president to make people listen. Sometimes the system needs a kick in the ass. We provided the boot." Captain Rivera joined them, carrying 3 cups of what smelled like expensive coffee. "Thought you two might need this. Also, I've been promoted to major. Apparently jumping the chain of command and going straight to the Inspector General is frowned upon unless it works, in which case it's called exemplary initiative." They laughed, the 3 of them standing in the fatting afternoon sun. Survivors of a battle fought not with bullets but with evidence, courage, and stubborn refusal to accept injustice. 6,000 miles away, in a hospital in Kabul, an 8-year-old girl named Amina took her first steps on healing legs. A nurse steadied her, encouraging in Pashto. On the wall beside her bed hung a photograph, an American soldier in combat uniform, dusty and exhausted but smiling. Amina didn't remember much from that terrible day. She remembered pain, fear, her mother's screams. And she remembered hands, strong, gentle hands covered in blood, working desperately to save her. She remembered a voice speaking soft English words she couldn't understand but whose meaning was clear. "I've got you. You're going to be okay. I won't let you die." The nurse asked her about the photograph. Amina touched it gently, reverently. "Malak," she whispered, "angel." Back in the United States, Chen returned to Fort Campbell, Tennessee, assigned to a new unit that greeted her with respect and curiosity. Her story had spread through the military grapevine, growing with each telling, some versions accurate, others embellished, all of them ending with the same lesson. Sometimes doing the right thing costs everything, but it's still worth it. She unpacked in her new barracks, arranging her gear with practiced efficiency. The soldier's medal went on her dresser, next to a photo of her unit from her first deployment. She stared at it for a long time, thinking about how close she'd come to losing it all. Her phone buzzed. An email from an unfamiliar address. "Dear Staff Sergeant Chen, you don't know me, but my name is Thomas Carey. I'm a teacher in Vermont. I saw your story on the news, and I wanted to tell you that I've been sharing it with my students. We need more examples of moral courage in a world that often rewards expedience over ethics. Thank you for showing my students what integrity looks like, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Tom." It was the first of hundreds. Letters poured in from across the country, from veterans who'd faced similar choices, from parents who wanted their children to know heroes still existed, from teachers, pastors, factory workers, and retirees who'd been moved by her story. One letter came from Afghanistan, painstakingly translated from Pashto to English. The village elder wrote, "You saved my granddaughter. You honored our home with your presence. We pray for you every day. You are family now, always." Chen kept that letter in her pocket, close to her heart. Months passed. The army moved forward as it always did. The corruption scandal faded from headlines. Mason and Daniels became cautionary tales in leadership training. The base in Afghanistan implemented new oversight procedures for supply chains. And late one autumn night, Chen's phone rang. An international number she didn't recognize. "Hello." Static crackling, then a small voice speaking careful English. "Hello, is this Sergeant Chen?" "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Amina. My uncle helped me call. I want to say thank you for saving my life." Chen's vision blurred with tears. "Amina, oh my God, how are you? Are you okay?" "I am good. I can walk now. The doctors say I am. Miracle, but I know. You are the miracle. You are my angel." They talked for 20 minutes, Amina's uncle translating the more complex thoughts. The girl was living with distant relatives in Kabul, attending school, dreaming of becoming a doctor someday. She wanted to help people the way Chen had helped her. "I will make you proud," Amina promised. "I will be a good person like you." After they hung up, Chen sat in the darkness of her room, overwhelmed by the strange and beautiful trajectory her life had taken. She joined the army to serve something greater than herself. She'd almost lost everything for honoring that commitment. And now, somehow, she'd been given not just redemption but purpose renewed. The next morning, she reported for duty with her new unit. They were deploying to Jordan in 6 weeks. New mission, new challenges, new opportunities to serve. As she stood in formation, listening to her commander brief them on the deployment, Chen touched the medal on her chest. Not the soldier's medal, that stayed carefully preserved at home. This was her combat medical badge, earned through 3 deployments and countless lives saved. Staff Sergeant Maria Chen had learned the hardest lesson any soldier can learn. Sometimes the right choice is the one that costs everything. And sometimes, just sometimes, you get everything back and more. She'd saved a life. She'd lost her career. She'd been betrayed, fought back, and won. And she'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Because some things are worth more than medals or careers or safety. Some things, like an 8-year-old girl taking her first steps on healing legs, are worth everything. The end.